Andrew mentioned, we are a party of action. We, as Marxists, understand Marxism and Marxist theory not to be a dogma. Marxist theory is the generalized experience of the working class, the decades and centuries of working class struggle to try to generalize what we've learned, how to win, what's happened when we lose. And Marxism is above all else. And this is what Marx or Lenin or all those who have prescribed or subscribed to the ideas of Marx have noted, that Marxism is above all else a guide to action. And we urge everyone to join with us a week from Saturday, that's Saturday, April 25th, to organize car caravan protests all around this country to demand that the government cancel the rents. Not a moratorium on rents, because after 2 or 3 months, when the moratorium lifts, working class people who are unemployed in the millions will not be able to pay their rent. They will be facing eviction in July or August. The working class did not create this crisis. This is not even fundamentally a coronavirus crisis. The 22 million people that Gloria mentioned who filed for unemployment insurance in the last 4 weeks. And by the way, that number is not the total number of the jobless. There's another 10 to 15 million workers who are unemployed, who have lost their jobs, but who are not eligible to file for unemployment insurance. They are workers who are working in the gig economy. They are immigrant workers who perhaps don't have legal papers. They are still part of the working class, the essential class in society. But because of their status, they're not able to apply for unemployment insurance. The real number who have been made jobless in the last 4 weeks is not 22 million, but probably closer to 35 to 40 million people. These people will not be able to pay rent. If they have a home, they will not be able to pay their mortgage. The reason they were laid off was not because of the coronavirus. The coronavirus didn't fire anybody. Employers fired workers. The government ordered employers and businesses to shut down, and workers lost their jobs. The reason the government, the capitalist government, the Trump administration, but it's not just Trump, it's the Democrats too, the reason they had to take these draconian measures is they spent January and February and the early part of March bashing China, demonizing China, ridiculing China, blaming China, calling it the terrorists, instead of doing that which was necessary to prepare the population for what was obviously going to be a virus that would spread to the shores of the United States. It was because of the capitalist government's negligence and malfeasance, its criminal conduct, that we are where we are today. And every worker who has been laid off today has been laid off because of the malfeasance and negligence of the capitalist government. Then that government turns around and says, look, we have to save the economy, which means offering a $6 trillion package, $6 trillion package. And it's not just the $2 trillion from the federal government. It's the $4 trillion lending facility backstop created by the Federal Reserve. And of that $6 trillion, $5 trillion goes to the banks and the hedge funds and the corporations. And the working class is being told, look, we're going to give you $1,200, which Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, said should last you 10 weeks. That's $120 per week for 10 weeks. While they bail out the banks and the hedge funds and the capitalist corporations, workers are laid off. It did not have to be this way. This was a decision by the capitalist state. And this is a consequence of the capitalist state's orientation. Workers in Denmark and France and Russia and other capitalist countries have not lost their jobs. They have not been compelled to go onto unemployment lines and wait for days and days or weeks to get some unemployment insurance. They know that their job will be guaranteed. They're not fired. The capitalist governments in those countries, because they fear the working class, bailed out sections of the working class. Here, the United States government, by its own criminal actions, created a crisis and then said to the 30 million workers or 40 million workers who are laid off, sorry, that's your problem. And what we're saying is, as a socialist party, is that this is not the way it has to be. This is not the way it should be. And if we act together, we can change the situation. If millions and tens of millions of workers say no to the capitalist government, you created this crisis, you bailed out the banks and corporations, we're not going to pay rent. We shouldn't be compelled to pay rent. We won't pay rent. This country can turn around. If the government fears the workers, all kinds of reforms can come. But if we fear the government, if we're in a state of backing up or bowing down to the powers that be, the capitalists run roughshod over the workers. We're building a socialist party. There's a lot of heritage to this in the United States. There were massive socialist parties and a mass communist party in the 1930s when that depression started. And that depression, by the way, is going to be considered smaller than what we're experiencing right now. We are already beyond the Great Depression in terms of unemployment numbers, and that will exponentially increase in the coming weeks. The Communist Party's slogan in the early 1930s was to demand unemployment insurance. That didn't exist in the United States. The slogan of the Communist Party was fight, don't starve, because 5,000 people literally were starving to death every year in the United States. Older people had no Social Security. Workers did not have the right to unionize. As we mentioned earlier last week, the workers under the leadership of socialist and communist parties and communist and socialist organizers began to move. They began to mobilize. They became radical, which meant that they, as Eugene said it, demanded the power. General strikes took place in San Francisco, in Toledo, and Minneapolis in 1934. Thousands of factories were seized in sit-down strikes, not just at Flint, but all over the country. And in the face of the rising tide of the socialist and communist movement and the working class generally in the United States, the ruling class, the capitalists who said, no, we can never give you unemployment insurance. We can never give you Social Security. We'll never legalize the right to form unions. Suddenly, all of those demands that seemed impossible in 1932 became realizable in 1935 or 36, because the workers were moving, because the working class was fighting, because the socialist and left movement was growing. I mean, a lot of us have paid attention to or been part of the Bernie Sanders movement in 2016 or 2020. We know many of you who are applying for membership in the PSL now were very hardworking volunteers for the Sanders movement. You, like we, like millions of other people, especially millions of young people, tens of millions, wanted what Bernie Sanders was demanding, a political revolution, an end of staggering student debt, affordable housing, free healthcare, or affordable healthcare. This calls for a political revolution. But when the Democratic Party establishment and its media arms tried to destroy Sanders and then did destroy the Sanders campaign, Bernie left. He dropped out and decided to support Joe Biden. You cannot support Joe Biden and at the same time be for political revolution. Joe Biden is the antithesis of a political revolution. I don't need to document all of his conduct, but he's pro-war. He's a racist. He's pro-capitalist. He's an imperialist. He is not the political revolution. And we can't have socialist movements premised on supporting this or that politician, because this or that politician can step back and say, I surrender, I cry uncle, we have to do something other than a political revolution. Let's settle for something less. Let's settle for the lesser evil. Let's get Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump, not the political revolution. To build a real socialist movement, it can't be based on the personality of a politician, no matter how good they are, no matter how sincere or earnest they are. In order to build a socialist movement, the working class needs its own party, and a party that's developed based on experience, based on collectivity, based on the theory of Marxism, which takes, again, the generalized experience of past working class struggles and forges it together to fight, to do combat with the capitalists, to mobilize the people, to make the people understand that we, the working class, produce everything, and that if we don't work, everything stops, and that we are the indispensable and essential class. But what we don't have, as Eugene put it, is we don't have the power. In order to get the power, we have to have a party. That doesn't mean we don't have united fronts. We have many, but we need a working class party that can lead the movement, that's based on a solid revolutionary program, that's committed to values that no single individual can say, sorry, this movement's over. That can never happen with a real, genuine socialist party. We invite all of you to join our party, to look into it, to find out where we are, what we stand for, and for everyone to join us in the streets, in these car caravans on Saturday, April 25th. We'll have more announcements coming about how you can register your protest in your city. If we unite the working class and those who are renters but can't pay the rent, if we bring the millions together, and they can be brought together, we can win this battle. We can cancel the rents. Thank you very much.